The story of non-avian dinosaurs and the massive asteroid that struck Earth 66 million years ago is well known. This collision wiped out most life. But recent findings suggest a more complex event. Researchers discovered a massive underwater structure called Nadir in the Atlantic Ocean in 2022. This crater, located off the coast of Guinea in Africa, measures about 9.2 kilometers wide and lies deep beneath the ocean floor. Scientists were surprised because it dates back to the same period as the Chicxulub impact in Mexico. This raises the possibility that a second asteroid hit Earth during the same era, making the end of the dinosaurs even more violent than previously imagined. While the Chicxulub crater is much larger, the discovery of Nadir suggests that the rulers of Earth might have been double-tapped by space rocks. Some believe this second asteroid could have broken off from the main one, or was part of a separate cluster that arrived around the same time, adding a new layer of terror to the mass extinction event. Researchers are still working to understand the exact sequence of events, but the presence of this second crater proves that the end of the Cretaceous period was even more chaotic than we once thought possible. Confirming that Nadir was indeed caused by an asteroid was a major breakthrough, although the exact timing relative to the main impact remains a subject of debate, even though it was smaller than the 200-kilometer-wide Chicxulub crater. An impact of this scale is exceptionally rare, occurring only once every 50,000 to 100,000 years. The Nadir asteroid was nearly 500 meters across, which is significantly larger than many famous space rocks, including the one responsible for the Tunguska event in Russia. This object was not just big, but also incredibly fast, hitting the coast at 72,000 kilometers per hour. Such speed is many times faster than a tank shell, and given its enormous mass, it carried a staggering amount of kinetic energy. When it slammed into the ocean, it released energy equivalent to 5,000 megatons of TNT, which is more than the entire current nuclear arsenal of the world combined. The resulting explosion would have been catastrophic for anything living in the vicinity, creating a massive fireball and boiling the surrounding sea water instantly. It is hard to imagine the sheer power of such a collision, which would have been felt for thousands of miles across the planet. If the Nadir asteroid arrived before or during the main event, its arrival would have been terrifying for any creature nearby. It would have appeared in the sky as a light 24 times brighter than the sun, causing massive thermal radiation that could burn animals from a great distance. The impact created superheated winds, faster than any hurricane, which would have leveled forests and obliterated wildlife for hundreds of kilometers. Because it struck the ocean, it also generated a massive tsunami that might have been 3 times taller than the Eiffel Tower near the source. These giant waves would have traveled across the Atlantic Ocean, reaching the coasts of North and South America, while scarring the African shoreline. The force was so great that it cracked the seafloor and triggered a magnitude 7 earthquake, adding more chaos to an already dying world. While the water might have cushioned some effects, it actually worsened others by sending enormous volumes of water and debris inland, destroying ecosystems that were already under immense pressure from the changing global conditions. This combination of fire and water created a nightmare scenario for every living thing in the region. One of the most dangerous aspects of the Nadir impact was the material it kicked up into the sky. It hit an area rich in carbon and sulfur, which when vaporized could have significantly altered the global climate. Some research suggests that smaller impacts like Nadir can actually have longer-lasting atmospheric effects than giant ones, because the finer dust particles stay airborne longer without clumping together. This could have led to a drop in global temperatures and a reduction in rainfall, making the world even more inhospitable for the remaining dinosaurs. Even if Chicxulub was the primary cause of extinction, Nadir likely weakened global ecosystems or intensified the final blow for modern humanity. Such an event would be an absolute disaster, killing millions instantly along the coastlines and causing global economic collapse and food shortages. It serves as a stark reminder of how fragile life on our planet can be, and how the history of life on Earth has been shaped by sudden and violent cosmic events that changed everything in an instant. The discovery of Nadir is a reminder that we are still uncovering the secrets of our planet's most violent days and the forces that shape the world we live in today. The release of chemicals into the air would have been devastating, because the asteroid hit a black shale deposit rich in carbon and sulfur. This is possibly the worst place for such an impact, as it sent toxic materials high into the atmosphere. Scientists have used simulations of other asteroids like Bennu to understand what would happen in this scenario. Such an event could drop global temperatures by several degrees for 3 or 4 years, while also reducing rainfall by 15% across the planet. Furthermore, the ozone layer could be depleted by over 30%, leading to increased radiation and more biological stress for surviving species. While Nadir was smaller than its famous cousin in Mexico, its environmental impact was still significant enough to cause a global world of hurt for everything alive. At the time, these climatic shifts would have forced species already struggling to adapt to even harsher conditions, potentially speeding up the collapse of entire food chains around the globe. An interesting scientific paradox suggests that smaller impacts like Nadir might actually cause longer-lasting climate changes than much larger ones. When a massive asteroid hits, it kicks up so much dust that the particles frequently collide and form larger, heavier clumps, which then fall back to Earth relatively quickly. However, with a smaller impact, the dust is less dense and stays suspended in the atmosphere for a longer period, creating a prolonged cooling effect. This means the Nadir impact might have caused a lingering winter that lasted longer than the initial darkness from the larger Chicxulub asteroid. If Nadir hit shortly before the main impact, it would have destabilized global ecosystems, making the world even more vulnerable to the final extinction event. If we imagine a similar impact today, the results would be unthinkable, with hundreds of millions of people living along the Atlantic coast at risk of instant death or displacement, while global food supplies would fail due to the sudden changes in weather and temperature. It is a sobering reminder of the power of the cosmos. Thanks for watching, and until next time on Extinct Zoo. The sheer scale of the Nadir asteroid is difficult to comprehend when compared to modern structures, as it was roughly 11 times taller than the Burj Khalifa, which is currently the tallest building in the world, despite being located over 900 meters deep underwater. The impact was so violent that it left a massive scar on the Atlantic floor. This asteroid was not only huge, but also incredibly heavy, weighing about 4 billion times more than the fastest tank shells ever fired by humans. When it entered the atmosphere, it became 24 times brighter than the sun, creating a blinding flash that would have been the last thing many creatures ever saw. The resulting energy release was equivalent to 5,000 megatons of TNT, which is significantly more than the entire current nuclear arsenal of every nation on Earth combined in an instant. A fireball larger than Central Park was born at the impact site, causing the surrounding ocean to boil and sending superheated winds across the land at speeds greater than any hurricane. These winds would have uprooted entire forests and destroyed everything in their path for hundreds of kilometers in every direction, making the coastal regions of Africa a zone of total annihilation for the herds of dinosaurs that lived there. Beyond the immediate fire and wind, the Nadir impact triggered a massive tsunami that reached heights 3 times greater than the Eiffel Tower near the source of the collision. These colossal waves would have surged across the Atlantic Ocean, reaching the shores of North and South America, and causing catastrophic damage to coastal ecosystems. The impact also struck a black shale deposit, which is a type of rock rich in carbon and sulfur, and vaporized it into the atmosphere. This created a toxic cloud that could have depleted the ozone layer by 32% and reduced global rainfall by 15% according to modern simulations using asteroids like Bennu, while the larger Chicxulub impact was responsible for energy equivalent to 10 billion Hiroshimas. The Nadir event added a prolonged layer of climatic stress that may have lasted longer due to the way dust particles behave in smaller clouds. This secondary blow likely made the global environment even more hostile and contributed to the rapid extinction of 75% of all species, including the non-avian dinosaurs, for humanity. Such an event today would be a disaster beyond imagination, putting over 200 million people in harm's way and leading to a global economic collapse that would change the course of history forever. Based on findings from late Cretaceous African geological formations, we can assume that several different dinosaur groups were roaming the region during the Nadir event. These likely included long-necked titanosaurs, armored abelisaurids, and duck-billed hadrosaurs. For these creatures, the flash of light was only the beginning of a nightmare. As the asteroid hit the ocean, the energy release was so immense that any animal within hundreds of kilometers would have suffered severe thermal radiation burns. However, the intense heat was just one part of the destruction. Following the flash, a massive pressure wave of superheated air traveled outward faster than a hurricane. This blast would have flattened entire ancient forests and turned the landscape into a wasteland, while water helped absorb some of the kinetic energy. It also created a deadly secondary effect. The resulting tsunami was massive, reaching heights of over 300 meters near the impact zone. These giant walls of water would have moved with incredible speed, drowning everything in the coastal lowlands. and leaving behind layers of salt and debris that would prevent life from returning for a very long time. The discovery of the Nadir crater suggests that the mass extinction was not a single isolated event, but potentially a double tap from space that hit the Earth when it was already under stress. If the Nadir asteroid arrived shortly before the main impact in Mexico, it would have severely weakened global ecosystems and made species more vulnerable to the total collapse that followed. Scientists estimate that the main Chicxulub impact packed more energy than 10 billion Hiroshima bombs, making the final extinction almost inevitable regardless of other strikes. However, the additional presence of the Nadir impact highlights how precarious life can be when faced with cosmic forces beyond our control. Looking at this through the lens of modern humanity, a similar event today would be an unparalleled tragedy, killing millions in seconds and causing a global famine that could last for years. The history of these ancient impacts reminds us of the fragility of our own civilization and the deep scars left by events that happened 66 million years ago. Thanks for watching, and until next time on Extinct Zoo. To understand how researchers identified the Nadir crater, we must look at the technology of seismic reflection data, which allows scientists to peer deep beneath the ocean floor by sending sound waves through the water and measuring how they bounce off different layers of sediment and rock. They can create a three-dimensional map of the subsea geography. It was during such a survey off the coast of Guinea that the distinct bowl shape of the Nadir structure was first noted. Shape of the crater, including its raised rim and central peak, provided undeniable evidence of an extraterrestrial impact rather than volcanic activity or natural tectonic shifts. This discovery was a reminder that much of Earth's history remains hidden beneath the waves, waiting for the right technology to bring it to light. As researchers continue to analyze the data, they are looking for specific mineral markers such as shocked quartz, which only forms under the extreme pressure of an asteroid strike. Confirming these details will provide a definitive link between the Nadir crater and the events that reshaped the biological history of our world. The next phase of research involves deep-sea drilling projects that aim to collect physical samples from the heart of the Nadir crater. By extracting core samples from the seafloor layers, scientists can examine the precise moment of impact and the environmental recovery that followed. These samples act like a time capsule, preserving the chemical signature of the atmosphere and the state of the ocean from 66 million years ago. The international scientific community is particularly interested in comparing these findings with the well-documented records from the Chicxulub site in Mexico to see if there are matching layers of iridium or other rare elements. This research will not only help us understand the end of the dinosaurs, but also refine our models for how Earth reacts to sudden massive changes in climate. As we look toward the future, the study of the Nadir crater reminds us that our planet has a long and violent history, and that by studying these ancient scars, we are better prepared to understand the cosmic environment in which we live and the long-term survival of our own species on this planet. Thanks for watching, and until next time on Extinct Zoo.